The rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse office, like accusations that refused to be silenced. Detective Marcus Hayes stood in the center of Richard Caldwell's private study, his weathered hands tucked into the pockets of his coat, eyes scanning every detail of the room where one of the country's most powerful men had drawn his last breath. The official report called it suicide, a single gunshot wound to the head, the weapon still clutched in Caldwell's hand when his assistant found him that morning. Clean, simple, tragic. But Marcus had been a detective for 23 years, and nothing about this scene felt clean or simple. The mahogany desk stretched before him like an altar to success, its surface immaculate except for a single photograph in a silver frame. Marcus picked it up, studying the image of a younger Caldwell with his arm around a woman and 2 children, all of them smiling on some Mediterranean beach. The glass was covered in a thin layer of dust. He set it down carefully and moved around the desk, his shoes silent on the Persian rug that probably cost more than his annual salary. The body had been removed hours ago, but the presence of death lingered in the room like expensive cologne that had gone sour. "Detective Hayes?" A voice cut through his thoughts. Marcus turned to see Jennifer Caldwell standing in the doorway, her black dress perfectly tailored, her makeup flawless despite the tears that must have fallen earlier. Richard's widow, 42 years old, former model, now the grieving wife of a billionaire. "Have you found anything that might explain why Richard would do this?" Marcus studied her face, looking for the micro-expressions that always told the real story. Her hands were steady, her voice controlled. Too controlled for someone who had just lost their husband. "I'm still gathering evidence, Mrs. Caldwell. These things take time." "We don't have time, Detective." She stepped into the room, her heels clicking against the hardwood beyond the rug. "The board is already circling. Richard's business partners are demanding answers. The media is creating narratives. I need to know what happened to my husband." "What do you think happened?" Marcus asked, watching her carefully. Jennifer's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "I think my husband was under tremendous pressure. The pharmaceutical industry is brutal, Detective. Richard made enemies. He made difficult decisions. Perhaps the weight of it all became too much." She paused, her eyes drifting to the windows. Or perhaps someone wanted it to look like he couldn't handle the pressure. There it was, the first crack in the widow's facade. Marcus pulled out his notebook. "Are you suggesting your husband was murdered?" "I'm suggesting you do your job and find out." Her tone sharpened, revealing something harder beneath the grief. Richard was a fighter. He didn't give up. Not on his company, not on his family, not on himself. The man I knew wouldn't have taken the easy way out. Marcus nodded slowly. "Tell me about the last few weeks. Did you notice any changes in his behavior? Was he worried about anything specific?" Jennifer's eyes flickered toward the painting on the far wall, an abstract piece that dominated the space with aggressive slashes of red and black. The movement was so quick Marcus almost missed it, but he had learned to notice everything. "He was distant," she said quietly. "More than usual. He spent most nights here in his office. Sometimes I would hear him on phone calls at 3 in the morning. When I asked, he said it was business in different time zones. Did you believe him?" "I believed my husband was hiding something." She met his gaze directly now, and Marcus saw calculation behind the tears that suddenly appeared in her eyes. "But I never imagined he was hiding a plan to leave me alone with all of this." Her voice broke convincingly on the last word, and she turned away, dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief that materialized from somewhere in her designer dress. Marcus let the silence stretch between them, a technique that often prompted people to fill the void with truth. But Jennifer Caldwell was no amateur. She simply stood there, her back to him, shoulders trembling slightly in what appeared to be suppressed sobs. "Mrs. Caldwell, I'm going to need access to your husband's private files, his computer, phone records, bank statements, everything." "His lawyer has most of that," she said without turning around. "Edward Chen. I can have him contact you." "What about a safe? Did your husband keep a safe in this office?" Now she turned, and Marcus saw genuine surprise cross her features. If he did, I didn't know about it. Richard kept his business affairs separate from our personal life. That was his way. Marcus filed that information away. Either she was an exceptional liar, or Caldwell had secrets even from his wife. Thank you for your time, Mrs. Caldwell. I'll be in touch if I have more questions. She nodded and walked toward the door, then paused. Detective, find the truth, whatever it is. Richard deserves that much. She left without waiting for a response, and Marcus was alone again with the ghost of a dead billionaire. He moved to the abstract painting Jennifer had glanced at, running his fingers along the ornate frame. The painting was slightly crooked. Marcus smiled grimly. In a room where everything was positioned with precision, one crooked painting was as obvious as a neon sign. He lifted the frame carefully and found exactly what he expected: a wall safe, its dark metal surface gleaming dully in the ambient light. The safe was a Garrison X9, military grade, the kind that could withstand explosives and cutting torches, the kind that cost more than most people's cars, the kind that protected secrets worth killing for. Marcus pulled out his phone and called his partner. Tony, I need you to bring the safe specialist. Yeah, the expensive one. And Tony, keep this quiet. I don't want the family or the press knowing about this yet. He hung up and stared at the safe, feeling the familiar pull of a case that was about to break wide open. Whatever was inside this safe, Richard Caldwell had wanted it protected, or hidden, or both. 3 hours later, Marcus watched as Gerald Kopecki, a wiry man in his 60s with the steady hands of a surgeon, finished his work on the safe. The click of the lock disengaging sounded like a gunshot in the quiet office. There you go, Detective, Gerald said, standing back. But I gotta tell you, this safe, it was opened recently, within the last 48 hours. You can tell by the lubrication patterns on the mechanism. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. You're sure? 30 years in this business, Detective. I'm sure. Someone with the combination opened this safe right before Mr. Caldwell died. Maybe it was him, maybe it wasn't, but someone was in here. After Gerald left, Marcus stood alone before the open safe. His hand hesitated on the door. He thought about his sister Emma, her face gaunt and gray in the hospital bed, the cancer eating through her like acid. Stage 4. The doctors had said it came out of nowhere, aggressive and merciless. She had been taking medication for arthritis, something called Flexeril, manufactured by none other than Caldwell Pharmaceuticals. 6 months after she started taking it, the tumors appeared. The company had denied any connection. The lawsuits had been dismissed. Emma had died 3 years ago, and Marcus had carried that anger like a stone in his chest ever since. Now he was standing in the office of the man whose company had killed her, about to open a safe that might contain evidence of crimes that went far beyond one suspicious death. His hands were shaking. He forced them to be still. Inside the safe, 3 items lay carefully arranged. Marcus pulled on latex gloves and removed them one by one, his mind racing to process what he was seeing. The first was a leather-bound journal, expensive and heavy, filled with page after page of handwritten text. Marcus flipped it open and began to read, his stomach churning as the words registered. It was a confession, detailed and methodical, written in Richard Caldwell's distinctive handwriting. Marcus recognized it from the documents he had reviewed earlier. March 2019. We received the preliminary trial results for Flexeril. The data showed a significant increase in aggressive cancers among test subjects. Dr. Patricia Morrison recommended we halt production immediately and report to the FDA. I overruled her. The projection showed Flexeril could generate $800 million in revenue the first year. I buried the report. I paid Dr. Morrison $2 million to remain silent. I told myself we would monitor the situation, that the cancer link might be coincidental. But I knew. God help me. I knew. Marcus's vision blurred. He had to grip the edge of the desk to steady himself. Emma had started taking Flexeril in March 2019. The timing was exact. He forced himself to keep reading, page after page of confessions spanning 15 years. Falsified clinical trials, bribed FDA officials, suppressed studies linking Caldwell medications to heart attacks, strokes, organ failure, birth defects. Thousands of people dead or permanently damaged. all in the name of profit, all authorized by the man whose life Marcus was supposed to be investigating. The second item in the safe was a gun, a Sig Sauer P226, clean and oiled, the serial number filed off. Marcus examined it carefully. This was not the gun that had killed Richard Caldwell. The police report stated that Caldwell had used a Smith & Wesson revolver registered in his name. So why was there a second gun hidden in the safe? Marcus's mind constructed possibilities. A backup plan, insurance, or evidence of something more sinister. The third item made everything even more complicated. A last will and testament, signed and notarized just 48 hours before Caldwell's death. Marcus read through the legal language, his confusion growing with each paragraph. The will revoked all previous versions and completely disinherited Jennifer Caldwell and both of Richard's children. Instead, the entire estate, valued at approximately $4.2 billion, was being placed into a trust. The trust's sole purpose was to compensate victims of Caldwell Pharmaceuticals' negligence and criminal misconduct, with the confession in the journal serving as the basis for identifying victims and processing claims. Marcus sat down heavily in Caldwell's chair, the three items spread before him like pieces of a puzzle that refused to form a coherent picture. A man writes a detailed confession of his crimes. He changes his will to give away his entire fortune to his victims. He puts both documents in a safe along with an unregistered gun. Then he shoots himself with a completely different gun. Nothing about this made sense, unless... His phone buzzed. A text from the medical examiner. Talk's screen came back. "Call me." Marcus dialed immediately. Dr. Sarah Chen answered on the first ring. "Marcus, we found something unusual. Caldwell had high levels of diazepam in his system, enough to significantly impair motor function and judgment, but not enough to be lethal. He was drugged? Possibly. Or he took it himself. But here's the strange part. The angle of the gunshot wound is slightly off. It's consistent with suicide, but just barely. If someone wanted to stage a suicide and they had a drugged, compliant victim, this is what it might look like." Marcus closed his eyes, the pieces beginning to shift into a new configuration. "Sarah, is it possible Caldwell was conscious but incapacitated? Could someone have forced his hand around the gun and helped him pull the trigger?" A long pause. "Possible? Yes. Provable. That's going to be much harder. But Marcus, if you're asking me if this could be murder staged as suicide, I'd say the evidence is inconclusive but suspicious enough to warrant a full investigation." After he hung up, Marcus sat in the darkening office, watching the city lights flicker to life below. He thought about justice and revenge, about the difference between the two, and whether that difference mattered. Richard Caldwell had killed thousands of people through his greed and criminal negligence. Emma was just one name in a long list of victims. If someone had murdered Caldwell, they had arguably done the world a favor. But murder was murder, and Marcus had sworn an oath to uphold the law, not to decide who deserved to live or die. He picked up the journal again, flipping to the final entry, dated the day before Caldwell's death. The handwriting was shakier here, less controlled. "I cannot undo what I have done. The dead cannot be brought back. But perhaps I can prevent my family from benefiting from blood money. Perhaps I can ensure that my legacy is not one of wealth built on corpses. I am a coward. I have always been a coward. Even now, facing the consequences of my actions, I look for the easiest way out. But there is no easy way out of this. There is only the truth and the price that truth demands. To whoever finds this, I am sorry. It is inadequate and it is too late. But it is all I have left to offer. May God have mercy on my soul, because I will not." Marcus's hands trembled as he set the journal down. This was the confession of a man who had decided to die, but also of a man who wanted his death to mean something. Had Caldwell planned his own suicide and arranged everything to ensure his crimes would be exposed? Or had someone discovered his plans and decided to help him along, perhaps worried that he might lose his nerve at the last moment? The office door opened without warning. Marcus spun around to see a man in an expensive suit standing in the doorway, his face shadowed by the dim light. "Detective Hayes, we need to talk." Marcus's hand moved instinctively toward his weapon. "Who are you?" The man stepped into the room and Marcus recognized him from the company website. David Thornton, Caldwell Pharmaceuticals' chief financial officer. "I'm the man who's been waiting for you to find that safe," Thornton said calmly. "And I'm the man who's going to tell you what really happened to Richard Caldwell. You have 30 seconds before I arrest you for tampering with a crime scene." Thornton raised his hand slowly. "I haven't tampered with anything, Detective. I've been waiting for someone to find the truth. Richard wanted the truth to come out, but he knew his family would fight it. He knew the board would bury it. He needed someone impartial, someone who couldn't be bought or intimidated. He chose you. He didn't choose me. This is a random assignment. There are no random assignments when you have Richard Caldwell's resources." Thornton pulled out a folder from inside his jacket, moving slowly and deliberately. "He had you investigated, Detective Hayes. He knew about your sister. He knew you had personal reasons to see justice done. He left instructions with me. If anything happened to him, I was to ensure you were assigned to the case. I was to ensure you found the safe, and I was to tell you the complete truth." Marcus felt like the ground was shifting beneath him. "What truth?" Thornton placed the folder on the desk. "The truth is that Richard Caldwell spent the last 6 months of his life trying to atone for his sins. He contacted victims' families secretly, offering settlements with his personal money, not company funds. He gathered evidence against every executive who participated in the cover-ups, including me. He built a case that would destroy Caldwell Pharmaceuticals and everyone associated with it. And then he realized that wasn't enough. He realized that as long as he was alive, he would be the story. The evil CEO who got caught. But if he died, if he made himself the final victim of his own crimes, then the story would be about the victims, about people like your sister. Are you telling me Caldwell killed himself as a PR strategy? I'm telling you he killed himself as penance." Thornton's voice was steady, but his eyes were haunted. "But he didn't do it alone. He asked me to be there. He took the diazepam himself, said he needed it to go through with it. When the time came, his hands were shaking too much. He asked me to help him, to put my hand over his and help him pull the trigger. And I did. God help me, I did." The confession hung in the air between them. Marcus stared at the CFO, seeing the truth written in every line of his face. "You're confessing to murder. I'm confessing to assisted suicide. There's a difference, Detective, and you know it. Richard wanted to die. He planned his death meticulously. I simply helped him follow through when his courage faltered. The question is, what are you going to do about it?" Marcus looked at the 3 items from the safe, then at the folder Thornton had brought. "What's in the folder?" "A complete list of every victim of Caldwell Pharmaceuticals that Richard was able to identify. Names, dates, medications. Your sister's name is in there, Detective, along with approximately 11,000 others. Also included is a letter from Richard specifically addressed to you. He wanted you to decide." "Decide what?" Thornton met his eyes directly. "Whether to let his plan work, whether to let the confession and the will stand, or whether to expose the assisted suicide and complicate everything. If you arrest me, the family will use it to contest the will. They'll argue Richard was not of sound mind, that he was coerced or manipulated. They'll tie up the estate in courts for years, and the victims will never see justice. But if you rule this a suicide and close the case, the will stands. The trust is funded, the victims get compensation. The truth comes out. Richard's death accomplishes what his life never could." Marcus felt the weight of the choice pressing down on him like a physical force. Everything in his training, everything in his oath, told him to arrest Thornton, to expose the truth completely, to let the justice system sort it out. But he had been in the system long enough to know how it really worked. The Caldwell family had unlimited resources and lawyers who could turn black into white. The victims had nothing but their pain, and they're dead. If he did his job by the book, he might be ensuring that justice was never served. He thought about Emma again, her hand in his as she died, her last words asking him to be happy, to not let anger consume him. What would she want him to do? What would serve her memory better? Rigid adherence to the law or actual justice for the people who had suffered like she had? Marcus opened the folder and found his sister's name on page 3. Emma Hayes, age 41, cause of death, aggressive metastatic cancer linked to Flexoral use. Below her name were thousands of others, each one a life destroyed or ended by corporate greed. He pulled out the letter addressed to him and read it slowly, Richard Caldwell's final words reaching him from beyond the grave. Detective Hayes, if you are reading this, then I am dead, and you have found the evidence of my crimes. I chose you specifically because of your sister. I know that must seem cruel to force this decision on someone who has personal reasons to hate me. But I believe you are a good man, and I need a good man to decide my fate and the fate of my victims. The evidence in this safe can destroy my reputation completely and provide compensation to the people I harmed. But only if the will stands. Only if my death is accepted as what it is, a final act of contrition by a man who ran out of ways to live with himself. I am asking you to give me this one thing I do not deserve. Let my death have meaning. Let it be the start of healing for the people I hurt. In return, I offer you something I hope brings you peace. I killed your sister. Not intentionally, not personally, but through my choices and my greed. I am sorry, those words are hollow and worthless, but they are true. I hope that in some small way, knowing that I paid the ultimate price for my crimes brings you comfort. Respectfully, Richard Caldwell. Marcus set the letter down and looked at Thornton. How do I know this isn't all an elaborate cover-up? That you didn't murder Caldwell and stage all of this to cover your own crimes? You don't, Thornton said simply. You have to decide what you believe. You have to decide what serves justice. I can tell you that every document in that safe is authentic. I can tell you that Richard's plan was to expose everything, including my own involvement in the cover-ups. I'm going to prison, detective, whether you arrest me today or not. The evidence Richard compiled against me is part of the trust's documentation. I'm not trying to escape justice. I'm trying to ensure that Richard's sacrifice means something. Marcus stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city sprawling below. Somewhere out there were 11,000 families who had lost loved ones to Caldwell Pharmaceuticals. Somewhere out there were lawyers and executives who would fight to keep their wealth and power. And here, in this office, was a choice that would determine which group prevailed. He thought about his years as a detective, about all the times he had seen the guilty go free and the innocent suffer. He thought about the oath he had sworn, to uphold the law and seek justice. He thought about Emma's smile and the way she had always believed in doing the right thing even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard. Marcus turned back to Thornton. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave now and not contact me again. I'm going to complete my investigation. I'm going to review all the evidence, and I'm going to file my report based on what the evidence tells me. After that, whatever happens is out of both our hands. Thornton nodded slowly. That's fair. That's all Richard could have asked for. He walked to the door, then paused. Detective? For what it's worth, Richard said you were the best of us. He said if anyone could find a way to make this right, it would be you. I hope he was right. He left quietly, and Marcus was alone again with the evidence of Richard Caldwell's crimes and his final attempt at redemption. Marcus spent the next 4 hours documenting everything, taking photographs, making notes, preserving the chain of evidence. He read every page of the confession. He examined the gun and the will. He reviewed the folder with the victims' names, stopping occasionally when a name caught his attention, imagining the person behind it, the life cut short or forever altered. When he finally left the office as dawn was breaking, he had made his decision. He wasn't sure it was the right decision. He wasn't even sure there was a right decision. But it was his decision, and he would live with the consequences. 2 weeks later, Detective Marcus Hayes submitted his final report. The investigation concluded that Richard Caldwell had taken his own life while suffering from depression and anxiety related to business pressures. The physical evidence supported suicide. The testimony of witnesses confirmed Caldwell's troubled state of mind in his final weeks. The case was closed. The will was accepted by the probate court. The trust was established, and slowly, carefully, the process of compensating victims began. Marcus attended his sister's grave on the day the trust made its first payments. He stood in the rain, looking at her headstone, and told her about the choice he had made. He didn't know if she would have approved. He didn't know if he had served justice or simply enabled a cover-up. All he knew was that somewhere, families were receiving money that would never replace their loved ones but might ease their burden. Somewhere, the truth about Caldwell Pharmaceuticals was spreading, forcing changes in the industry. And somewhere, a dead billionaire's last desperate attempt at redemption was actually working. Marcus placed flowers on Emma's grave and walked away, carrying the weight of his choice like he carried everything else. Quietly, steadily, knowing that the burden was his alone to bear. In his pocket was a copy of Richard Caldwell's letter, which he read sometimes when the doubt became too heavy. And in his heart was a question that would never be fully answered. Had he administered justice, or had he simply let a guilty man die on his own terms? Perhaps, Marcus thought as he drove away from the cemetery, those were the same thing after all. Was justice truly served when the guilty punish themselves, or does real accountability require the full weight of the law? What would you have done in Detective Hayes' position? Share your thoughts below. Subscribe and hit that like button for more stories about power, justice, and the impossible choices that define us. Until the next case.